The story begins with Hashibami, who has a lot on his mind. He stresses over his height, his lack of time for homework, and his strange obsession with leather shoes. While walking down the street, he spots Kusaka inside her house. She is struggling with her assignments and muttering about how she wishes a fairy would magically finish them while she sleeps. Hashibami regularly gets an uncontrollable urge to pull pranks. Floating up, he enters through her window and realizes she has already fallen asleep at her desk. Recognizing her from class, he wonders what kind of harmless mischief he can cause. He briefly considers drawing a funny mustache on her face, but decides against it. Instead, he settles on a truly confusing prank, finishing her homework perfectly. He quickly completes the assignments and leaves. The next day at school, he yawns loudly in class. The teacher snaps at him to wake up and demands to know why his own homework is incomplete. He apologizes outwardly, though he silently laments that doing magical late-night favors leaves him absolutely no time for his own work. After class, he overhears Kusaka excitedly telling someone that a magical fairy actually completed her homework. Hearing this, he feels secretly proud that his helpful prank was a success. Suddenly, a girl slams her hand on his desk. As the class representative, she demands to know why he always forgets his assignments, scolding him for looking so unapologetic. He bows his head and mutters a quiet apology. She softens slightly, suggesting he should just do the work if he actually feels sorry. He insists he wants to, but has pressing, secret circumstances he simply cannot explain. Hearing this, her imagination runs wild in the wrong direction. Assuming his big secret is just him staying up all night playing embarrassing video games, she calls him a lazy slacker. Annoyed that she even wasted her time worrying about him, she storms off in a huff. Looking out the window, Hashibami reflects on the frustrating burdens of his fairy blood. His ancestors are leprechauns, trickster fairies from Europe who migrated to Japan during the Meiji era to escape the Industrial Revolution. Finding acceptance in a country that worshipped many gods, the fairies settled there, lived alongside humans, and passed down their magical bloodlines. As descendants of these mischievous shoemaking fairies, his family now runs a local leather shoe shop. Although he accepts his magical heritage, his constant urge to pull pranks makes it difficult for him to live a normal and respectable life. Later that night, he wanders the streets near his home, frustrated that no one has invited him inside. Leprechauns cannot enter a house without permission, so he has no way to satisfy the powerful prankster urges building up inside him. Clutching his hair in despair, he begs the universe for something to do. Suddenly, the class rep walks by and notices him struggling. Recognizing him from school, she steps closer and asks if he is sick. As she leans in, his pent-up prankster instincts completely take over. Unable to stop himself, he impulsively reaches out and pokes her right on the nose. The moment his finger makes contact, a strange jolt of magical energy surges between them. Startled, he awkwardly apologizes for the goofy reflex, fearing he took the prank too far, but he quickly realizes something else is entirely wrong. Her body begins to shiver and emit a faint glow. Her ear twitches and a small drop of blood appears. Shocked by the sight of the blood, she quickly pieces the strange situation together. Without explaining herself, she grabs his hand and insists he come with her immediately to figure out what just happened. Eventually, they arrive at her massive home, though he nervously points out how late it is to be making a visit. She drags him inside her large house. Desperate to understand the glowing phenomenon, she orders him to repeat the silly prank. He hesitates, completely overwhelmed by how intensely her presence magnifies his trickster urges. Suddenly, Tsukiko, Akira, and Koyoe walk into the room. They immediately start teasing Hoshine for secretly sneaking a boy into the house. Trying to defend herself, she awkwardly blurts out that his strange magic triggered a powerful reaction in her. Hoshine and the others burst into laughter, mercilessly mocking her for believing in fairy tales and making up such ridiculous excuses. Hashibami cringes at her terrible, embarrassing phrasing. Before the teasing can escalate, Akira notices something strange. Hoshine's ears have become visibly pointed. Examining her closely, Koyoe theorizes that the bizarre prank must have somehow awakened a hidden magical bloodline. Determined to prove her point and clear her name, Hoshine grabs Hashibami's hand and forces him to repeat the exact same prank on Hoshine, Akira, and Koyoe. He feels that same intense magical jolt surge through him again. In an instant, their ears also transform into pointed shapes, leaving everyone in the room completely stunned by the bizarre phenomenon. A brilliant light suddenly emerges in the center of the room, swirling into strips before fading to reveal Yami-san. Hoshine, Akira, Koyoe, and Hoshine clearly recognize her and greet her with deep respect. Yami announces her arrival and immediately demands to know exactly how they felt during the magical prank. Embarrassed, they struggle to explain, eventually admitting that the touch caused an overwhelming, dizzying burst of magical energy. Yami confirms that this strange phenomenon means their dormant magic has officially awakened. Confused by the entire situation, Hashibami raises his hand and asks for a simpler explanation. Looking right at him, Yami declares that the fastest way for him to understand is to simply keep playing his silly pranks on one of them. He freaks out, finding the task incredibly daunting. Seeing his hesitation, Yami asks for a volunteer to step forward, train with him, and eventually take the next step toward leadership. Tsukiko immediately volunteers, citing her duty. However, Hashin quickly intervenes. She argues that Tsukiko puts too much pressure on herself and should not be forced to partner with a total stranger for ridiculous magical training. Taking full responsibility for bringing him there in the first place, Hashin volunteers instead. After everyone else leaves the room, he cautiously asks if she is truly sure about her decision. Sitting down heavily, she replies that her personal feelings do not matter. Hashin declares she cannot disobey Yami and asks if Hashibami has any complaints about partnering with her. He denies having any issues, and she firmly states the matter is settled. Yami then gives him permission to play a prank on Hashin. He agrees, though he internally panics because pulling a prank on command while his target is wide awake is incredibly awkward. However, realizing he has free rein to annoy her, his trickster urges completely take over. He unleashes a rapid-fire series of goofy, harmless tricks. Watching closely, Yami encourages him to keep going until she is finally satisfied and orders him to step back. As he moves away, Hashin begins to glow brilliantly and fully transforms into an elf, leaving everyone amazed. Observing the results, Yami asks if he is descended from a leprechaun. Startled, he asks how she knows. She explains that despite her weakened state, she easily recognizes the trickster magic. She reveals that his pranks are actually a powerful form of mana manipulation. This same magic fuels his nightly urges and activates the dormant power inside Hashin. He is confused by the mention of dormant power. She clarifies that they also possess fairy blood and belong to a royal elf bloodline. He finally connects the dots, realizing Hashin and the others are elf royalty, which explains her new appearance. Noticing him staring, Hashin snaps at him to look away, prompting a quick apology from him. Finally, Yami apologizes for the delayed introduction and asks for his name. He formally introduces himself as Hashibami Yokek. Hearing this, Yami notes that his name means hazel, which is perfectly fitting since fairies are exceptionally fond of hazel trees. Turning to Tsukiko, Hashin, Koyoi, and Akira, she officially commands them to let him prank them every single night. Shocked by the sudden decree, he asks for a proper explanation. Yami prompts Hashin to clarify the situation. She explains that if one of them fully awakens their royal magic, they can use that power to permanently cure his uncontrollable prankster urges. She even believes that his short height and inability to concentrate on homework are side effects of his magical bloodline and promises that those issues can be fixed as well once her family's power is fully awakened. Hearing this, he is thrilled. He realizes that this arrangement will let him safely release his chaotic magical energy without causing trouble, while also offering a permanent solution to the problems he deals with every day. So when Yami asks for his answer, he eagerly accepts. Hashin and the others welcome him, though they nervously ask him not to go overboard with the pranks, wondering what kind of traps he might set up. Satisfied with the agreement, Yami then drops a huge surprise. To make the pranking easier, she wants him to pack his belongings and move into their house immediately. Yami announces she is retiring for the evening and promises to contact his parents to arrange the sudden move. After she vanishes, a heavy, awkward silence falls over the room. Hashibami feels incredibly self-conscious standing alone with them. Suddenly, Hashin loses her magical glow and reverts entirely to her normal appearance, including her regular ears. Realizing the transformation was only temporary, they conclude that none of them have fully awakened their magic yet. Wanting to break the awkward silence, Tsukiko notes that they still have plenty of time before nightfall. She offers to start cooking dinner, but since he has already eaten, she suggests he go relax in the estate's massive, luxurious hot spring bath. Later, while soaking in the steaming water, he contemplates his new targets. He mentally reviews the group, trying to figure out who will be the easiest victim for his chaotic magic. He evaluates their personalities, wondering what kind of goofy, messy traps will work best on each of them. He can hardly believe he has official permission to unleash his absolute wildest practical jokes on such a wealthy, proper household. After finishing his bath, he steps out into the hallway wearing a comfortable guest robe. Tsukiko suddenly approaches him, catching him slightly off guard. She tells him to drop the formalities, as their fates are now officially entwined. They need his magic, and he desperately needs their cure. Revealing that she's slipped away from the others, she pulls him aside with a serious expression. She surprises him by asking for a massive, secret favor. She begs him to focus his absolute craziest pranks strictly on her so she can awaken her magic first. Tsukiko insists she must become the next queen since she is the eldest, claiming it is simply the proper order of things. Begging him to rely solely on her, she demands he prank her immediately. Hearing this, Hashibami feels his trickster instincts flare up. He grabs a nearby showerhead and blasts her with cold water. Completely unfazed, she points out that her ears have not transformed yet and fiercely demands even more extreme pranks. Overwhelmed by her sheer intensity and lack of embarrassment, he hits her with a few more quick magical tricks until her ears finally point. Realizing he is outmatched by her determination, he awkwardly excuses himself and flees the room. Retreating to his assigned guest room, he twirls his hair and marvels at the comfortable bed she prepared for him, feeling incredibly lucky to have such a great setup. Suddenly, Akira bursts through the door uninvited, loudly demanding they have some fun. Closed behind, Koyoi rushes in, strictly scolding her for barging into his room without permission. Ignoring the reprimand, Akira spins around in a new dress, fishing for compliments and daring him to try and prank her. Koyoi sighs heavily, apologizing for the chaotic disturbance and explaining that they actually just came to invite him to play cards. He gladly accepts. Seeing his normal reaction, Akira smugly admits she was just testing him to see if he was an uncontrollable prank-obsessed maniac, proving she is quite the little troublemaker. Koyoi tries to send her away so he can rest, but she stubbornly refuses to leave them alone together. Giving up the argument, the three of them finally settle down and spend the rest of the night playing cards. During the card game, Akira suggests a mischievous bet. Whoever loses at Old Maid must endure one of Hashibami's magical pranks. When he asks what happens if he loses, she simply declares that the game will just keep going until he wins. The next morning, Hashin knocks on his door to check on him, only to find Hashibami, Akira, and Koyoi all fast asleep on his bed. Annoyed by the chaotic sight, she wakes them up and scolds them for being so lazy. Koyoi sleepily apologizes, explaining that they accidentally passed out from exhaustion because she was on a massive lucky streak. Akira teases him for being terrible at the game, though he insists she is just unnaturally good at cards. Visibly frustrated, Hashin calls him a loser and storms out into the corridor, muttering to herself. He quickly follows and grabs her hand to stop her, begging her not to be mad. She accuses him of pranking Akira and Koyoi during the night. He nervously admits that the game's betting rules forced his hand, reminding her that Yami gave him explicit permission to do so anyway. Pouting, she admits that is exactly why she is upset. She tells him he does not need to go after everyone else in the house and suggests he should strictly stick to pranking her. Startled, he is left completely confused by her sudden, unexpected jealousy. The next day at school, the classroom is buzzing with chatter. Clapping her hands, Yamanashi demands quiet as the bell rings, warning everyone that the teacher will arrive soon. The students obediently settle down, entirely used to her strict morning routine. Sitting at his desk, Hashibami watches her, reflecting on her sudden demand from the previous night. He notes that she always takes her responsibilities incredibly seriously. Throughout the day, she proves to be a model student. She answers the teacher's questions perfectly, shares her notes, helps clean the school, and constantly reminds her classmates to stay focused. After school, he hurries to catch up with her as she walks home. He praises her incredible work ethic, genuinely impressed by how hard she applies herself every single day. She humbly brushes the compliment off, claiming she is simply doing what is expected of her. He points out that her intense dedication perfectly explains her demand from yesterday. She desperately wants him to focus his pranks solely on her because she feels it is her strict duty to become the next queen. Suddenly, he notices she is walking in the wrong direction. She explains that taking this specific route is part of her daily routine to pay her respects. Stopping at a local shrine, she quietly prays to her parents and her elf ancestors who originally immigrated to Japan. He watches her in surprise, never expecting her to be so deeply spiritual. His surprise quickly turns into shock, however, when he suddenly spots Yami working at the exact same shrine, dressed in the traditional robes of a shrine maiden. Sweeping the shrine grounds, Yami confirms that she presides over the region. She explains that the shrine is hallowed ground where their ancestral spirits rest. Hashibami admits he expected elves to have completely different traditions, but she simply quotes the phrase, "When in Rome, do as the Romans do." She explains that the original Japanese elves specifically asked to be enshrined there, as it perfectly fits a country home to countless gods. He nods, finally understanding the logic. Watching Yamanashi pray, he realizes she visits her parents and ancestors every single day, finding her intense dedication almost desperately sad. Later that night, she confidently tells him to do his absolute worst. He hesitates to prank her, confused by her intense determination. She assumes he is worried about her homework, but he clarifies that he actually wants to know why she is so aggressively pursuing the magical awakening. He points out that Tsukiko is older and next in line, making it confusing why she is so fixated on stealing the spot. She quickly corrects him, explaining that she wants the power because she is the second child. She reveals that ever since their parents passed away, Tsukiko has constantly overburdened herself, acting as a mother to all of them, even working herself to the point of physical collapse. Desperate to save her from the stress, Hashin is determined to take on the royal responsibility herself. He is genuinely moved by her confession. She admits that seeing Tsukiko collapse from stress was just as shocking as losing their parents. Determined to lift that heavy burden, she vows to fully awaken her magic and follow in Yami's respected footsteps. Declaring it her absolute duty, she orders him to hurry up and unleash his wildest practical jokes on her. He spends the next half hour pulling out every magical trick in his arsenal, but to his dismay, her ears do not even point. He complains that he is setting up the exact same goofy traps as yesterday. Thinking she is acting a bit crazy for demanding more, he finally manages to surprise her with one last massive, confusing prank, successfully triggering her magical elf transformation for the night. A few days later, the moment class is finished, she grabs his hand and forcefully drags him toward home. She is incredibly eager, feeling a strong intuition that today is the day she will permanently awaken her magic. He sighs, asking if he really has to set up more exhausting traps. She quickly reminds him that he benefits from this arrangement just as much as she does, telling him to stop complaining and hurry up. As soon as they arrive back at the mansion, she eagerly waits for the tricks to begin. However, he just stands there awkwardly. When she asks what is wrong, he sheepishly admits that his prankster urges are not activating at all. Confused, she demands an explanation. He guesses that pulling ridiculous, high-effort jokes every single day has completely drained his magical stamina, leaving his trickster energy totally depleted. Shocked and frustrated by his sudden burnout, she screams in disbelief. At school, an awkward silence hangs heavily between Hashibami and Hoshine. When asked about the noticeable tension, she quickly brushes the question off. The rift stems from a stubborn argument the previous evening. When his magical energy completely ran dry, she realized her constant demands had depleted his mana. Feeling deeply guilty, she immediately apologized for pushing him too hard. However, he refused to accept her apology, arguing that he was the useless one for failing to hold up his end of the bargain while living under her roof. Their mutual guilt quickly spiraled into a frustrating argument over who was truly at fault. Back in the present, he watches her leave the classroom, hating the idea that their fun partnership might be permanently ruined. Fearing she might never summon him for a prank again, he walks home completely dejected. Seeking comfort, he visits his parents at their family shoe shop. Surprised to see him, they ask what is wrong, but he makes up a quick excuse about needing to grab something. Assuming he is still happily helping Yami and the others, his parents proudly praise him for carrying out such an honorable magical duty. They remind him that while they also struggled with trickster urges in their youth, his current tasks are uniquely important, and his father encourages him to take deep pride in his hard work. Internally, he despairs, feeling that hard work is meaningless if Hoshin refuses to seek him out anymore. Noticing his son's gloomy mood, his father offers one final piece of traditional wisdom. While leprechauns cannot enter a house uninvited, once they are summoned, they have absolute freedom to decide exactly what kind of mischief they want to cause. Hashibami sincerely thanks his father for the wise advice. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Hoshine, Tsukiko, Akira, and Koyoe are relaxing in the hot spring. Hoshine asks why they needed a group bath, and Tsukiko explains it is the perfect chance to talk privately before Hashibami returns home. Akira immediately complains that Hoshine is unfairly hogging all the magical pranks and demands a turn. Koyoe bashfully agrees. Hoshin tries to defend her actions, claiming she is taking on the burden so none of them have to. However, Tsukiko gently hugs her and points out that she has been isolating herself and treating Hashibami like a mere tool to achieve her own goals. Koyoe and Akira chime in, insisting they are a team and no one should carry the burden of the royal awakening alone. Akira proposes a fair pact, no more secretly stealing his time or hiding his magic from the others. When Hoshin asks how they will decide who gets pranked next, Tsukiko declares that the choice should simply be left up to Hashibami himself. Realizing how selfish she has been, Hoshin looks down in shame and apologizes to the group. Tsukiko gently suggests she should save her apology for Hashibami. Encouraged by their unwavering support, Hoshin smiles warmly and thanks them. Later, Hashibami stands outside the mansion, resolving to stop being so passive and finally be honest about his feelings. Suddenly, he hears a faint, desperate voice wishing for a fairy to appear. Realizing someone is actively summoning him, he quickly runs toward the source of the voice. Realizing the wish is coming from Yamanashi's room, he quickly flies through her open window. The moment he lands inside, they both instantly bow and apologize to each other. She expresses deep regret for selfishly forcing him to overuse his magic, while he apologizes for being so passive. Realizing they are stuck in a loop of guilt, he stops her. He honestly confesses that he never minded the daily tasks because he was genuinely entranced by her. He admits that pulling those magical tricks made him feel like they were growing much closer. Reminding her of Yami's advice about their mutually beneficial partnership, he asks to put the apologies behind them for good. Blushing deeply, she agrees, but demands he start calling her by her first name, Hoshin, to make things truly even. The sheer embarrassment and sweetness of the heartfelt moment cause a sudden, massive surge of magical energy. Without him pulling a single prank, she fully transforms into her awakened elf form. Flustered by the overwhelming emotions, her personality completely shifts. She loudly scolds him, calling him a dummy for making her magically awaken just from pure embarrassment. He bursts into laughter, completely delighted by her flustered reaction. Meanwhile, Tsukiko, Akira, and Koyae secretly listen from the other side of the door. Relieved to hear them laughing, the others are happy to see the two getting along again and glad that his trickster magic has finally returned. They begin wondering who he will prank next and eagerly wait for their own chance to awaken their magic. At morning in the corridor, Hashibami yawns tiredly as Hashin warmly greets him. Unbeknownst to them, Koyae watches from around the corner, visibly jealous of their increasingly close interaction. While putting their shoes on at the entryway, Hashin suggests they walk to school together. She insists there is no need to keep pretending they are not living under the same roof, confidently expressing her trust in him. He smiles in agreement. Suddenly noticing a tiny speck of dust on his leather shoe, he obsessively begins brushing it. She points out that her shoes are already spotless, but he admits that his leprechaun blood gives him an uncontrollable urge to shine shoes alongside his prankster instincts. Amused, she offers him her shoes anyway, saying it might help him get the impulse out of his system while also thanking him for helping her. He happily accepts the offer, mentioning how much he has always admired her footwear. As he carefully polishes the leather, he asks a lingering question about her family's lore. He wonders why his magic is specifically required to awaken her elf blood when she usually appears entirely human. She explains that her family's magical lineage is quite thin. While her mother was a pure elf like Yami, her father was human. Because only a small population of elves originally migrated to Japan, they had to intermarry with humans and other beings, severely diluting the elf genes over the generations. Therefore, she desperately needs his mana manipulation to artificially invoke her dormant bloodline. Since fully awakening the royal power is still a long way off, she playfully demands he keep the daily pranks coming. He confidently promises to handle it, completely unaware that Koyae is still secretly listening to their entire conversation. Later that afternoon, Hashibami sweeps the classroom entirely by himself. He reflects on the morning's chaos, still annoyed at how much of a big deal everyone made over him arriving at school with Hoshine. Because the class overheard them using a first-name basis, the other boys grew incredibly jealous and abandoned all their chores, leaving him to handle the entire cleaning duty alone as punishment. Hearing footsteps, he assumes Hoshine has returned, but is surprised to see Koyae standing there. She awkwardly apologizes for interrupting, but he assures her it is completely fine. As she steps closer, he internally notes with slight intimidation that she is actually taller than him, making him wonder how to talk to her naturally without making things awkward. She nervously stammers before finally admitting that she wants him to pull a prank on her. Startled, he listens as she confesses to feeling jealous of all the time he spends with Hoshine. While she wouldn't mind achieving the royal awakening, she mostly just feels left out and wants to experience the fun magical tricks for herself. He is perfectly willing to oblige her bizarre request, but he quickly realizes there is a major problem. His trickster instinct are completely unresponsive to her. He wonders why he feels absolutely zero impulse to cause mischief around her. Before he can figure it out, Hoshin calls out his name from the hallway. Panicking, Koyae grabs his arm and shoves him directly into a nearby cleaning locker, diving in right behind him. He is totally confused by the sudden, cramped hiding spot, but she quickly whispers a desperate apology. Stepping into the empty classroom, Hoshin wonders where he went. Hearing a faint noise, she begins suspiciously eyeing the locker, unaware that the two of them are currently squished together in the dark alongside the mops and buckets. Inside the cramped locker, Hashibami nervously whispers, hoping the person outside is not actually Hoshine. Shushing him, Koyae insists he ignore the distraction and focus entirely on her. Out in the classroom, Hoshine notices the abandoned broom. Wondering why he would suddenly ditch his cleaning duties halfway through, she notes that it is completely out of character for him and eventually leaves to check elsewhere. Once the footsteps fade away, Koyae declares it is the perfect chance for him to finally pull a prank on her. Squeezed tightly together in the dark, she looks down at him expectantly, waiting for the magic to happen. However, his trickster impulses completely fail to activate. Deeply intimidated by the fact that she is physically looking down at him, he suddenly feels incredibly awkward. Unable to handle the mounting claustrophobia, he bursts out of the locker and dashes into the classroom, gasping for fresh air. Hurt and confused, she asks why his magic refuses to work on her. Here's a simpler version. He bows deeply and apologizes, saying his failure has nothing to do with her. He admits he feels insecure about his short height, and because she is much taller than him, his prankster urges get overwhelmed and stop working. She is surprised but sadly agrees that her tall, tomboyish build makes her hard to target. Still, she strongly insists that she will do anything to make him prank her, leaving him confused by her determination. Later, he visits the shrine to speak with Yami. She notices his sudden curiosity about the royal awakening and asks what is on his mind. He explains that he understands why Tsukiko and Hoshin want to awaken their magic, but he is incredibly confused as to why Koyoe is equally desperate for the position. Realizing that Koyoe must have cornered him, she nods in understanding. To clear up his confusion, she explains that the royal leader commands all of Japan's immigrant fairies. Because their family descends directly from royalty, that massive responsibility is automatically foisted onto them by birthright, putting an immense, inescapable pressure on all of their shoulders. Continuing their talk at the shrine, Yami explains that royal magic has the rare ability to permanently remove the hereditary urges that burden fairies, allowing them to live normally among humans. She then admits with a small laugh that she is only a temporary leader. Her late sister, the true head of the family, had the real power, but since she is gone, Yami stepped in until one of the nieces fully awakens their abilities. She adds that Tsukiko and Hoshine act out of strict duty. Akira is simply enjoying herself, but Koyoe has a hidden reason she keeps to herself. Later at the estate, Hashibami watches the group in the kitchen. Tsukiko asks Koyoe to grab a platter from a high shelf. Akira jokes that despite her shy personality, Koyoe's tall height makes her the natural choice for heavy lifting. Afterward, Hoshine approaches Hashibami and asks him to come to her room for their usual training so she can scold him for skipping cleaning duty. However, he surprisingly refuses. Instead, he goes to Koyoe's room and knocks. He hears panicked movement inside before she opens the door and apologizes for the delay. Seeing her nervous, he offers to leave and come back later. Afraid she is being rejected again, she quickly begs him to stay. He gently holds her shoulders and apologizes for being insensitive earlier. He says he will do his best and insists he really wants to prank her properly. Shocked, she asks how he plans to overcome his trickster block. He explains that Yami already told him everything, including the secret that her tall height and tomboyish nature make her feel like she doesn't truly belong in her family, almost like a changeling. Hashibami gently explains that he understands the folklore of changelings, saying he knows why she feels like a human child who was accidentally born into a magical family. He reassures her that those fears are not true, reminding her that she successfully developed pointed ears like the others during his previous magic. He promises to help her never feel insecure again. His sincere words trigger a strong magical reaction, and she suddenly transforms into a beautiful awakened elf. He immediately praises her new appearance and encourages her to show the others. When they step into the hallway, everyone cheers. Akira compliments her bright new look, and Koyoe happily gives him a thumbs up, saying she finally feels like she truly belongs. Everyone celebrates with a group hug. Taking advantage of the happy mood, he suggests that since she has always handled heavy tasks because of her height, he will take over those duties from now on. He says that since he lives there, he wants to be useful and help them properly. Hoshine and Tsukiko praise his reliable attitude. Koyoe quietly watches him and suddenly feels her heart flutter, realizing she may be falling for him. Just then, the doorbell rings. She instinctively goes to answer it, but he gently stops her and says he will do it instead, since that is his new responsibility. His small protective gesture makes her blush even more. When they open the gate, Yami is standing there. She explains that she came for a personal visit and bows deeply, apologizing to Koyoe for revealing her private insecurities. Koyoe forgives her and proudly shows her new elf form, saying Hashibami helped her overcome her doubts. Still feeling guilty, Yami gives her an envelope with 2 tickets to a luxury pool resort, saying she should invite someone special to go with her. Rather than picking just one person, the entire group ends up going to the pool resort together. Koyoe apologizes for not being able to settle on a single guest. Hashibami reassures her, noting that it would have been totally unfair to leave the others behind. Hashin agrees, pointing out that someone would have been offended no matter what. Internally, Koyoe silently apologizes to Yami, admitting she simply lacked the courage to ask him on a solo date just yet. Regardless, Tsukiko is thrilled they all came, even if it meant everyone else had to pay their own way. Akira excitedly shows off everyone's new swimsuits, playfully asking him whose outfit is the best. Overwhelmed by the sudden fashion show, he barely has time to react before Koyoe suddenly grabs his arm. Not wanting him to focus on the others, she quickly drags him away toward the attractions, leaving the rest of the group disappointed that their plan failed. Holding his hand, she nervously asks if they can at least ride the giant water slide together. He happily agrees. They sit down and launch down the chute, water rushing and splashing all over them. However, when they shoot out at the bottom, they crash into the pool in a clumsy, tangled wipeout. Completely flustered by the ungraceful landing, she gets incredibly embarrassed. Screaming an apology, she frantically runs away and vows never to do that again, leaving him scratching his head in complete confusion. Before he can process what just happened, Hoshine runs over and pulls him away to the wave pool. He is skeptical, wondering if artificial waves are really worth the hype and lamenting that he is not actually getting to swim normally. She insists he just does not understand the magic of it yet. Suddenly, a massive wave crashes directly into them. She dramatically declares that fighting against the surging water gets her completely fired up, comparing it to battling a villain. He jokingly asks if she thinks she is an anime character. Grabbing his hand tightly, she tells him to shut up and experience the thrill for himself as the next giant wave approaches. The towering artificial waves turn out to be genuinely terrifying. Not wanting Hoshine to see him panic, Hashibami makes a frantic excuse and runs away. Fleeing blindly, he accidentally trips and splashes into a calm, lazy river nearby. He surfaces right next to Akira, who is casually lounging on a donut floaty. She playfully calls him a silly Billy and asks him to push her around the water for some excitement. He happily agrees, but the moment he pushes the floaty, the plastic tears and rapidly deflates. Panicking because she cannot actually swim, she desperately clings to him to stay above water. After safely guiding her to the shallow end, the sudden, clumsy contact leaves him completely flustered. He stammers a quick apology and scrambles away, leaving her frustrated by his sudden retreats. Completely exhausted and embarrassed by his clumsy behavior, he sits gloomily on a nearby bench, wondering if the entire day is cursed. Tsukiko approaches and sits next to him, noticing his bright red face. Smiling gently, she pats her lap and offers him a place to rest his head. He hesitates, but she kindly reassures him. She tells him not to stress over the chaotic accidents in the pool, promising that everyone knows he never means any harm by his clumsiness. Just as he starts to relax, Akira, Koyoi, and Hoshine suddenly spot them. Feeling left out, Akira loudly complains about Tsukiko getting all of his attention and playfully dives onto the bench. Koyoi tries to hold her back, while Hoshine attempts to break up the chaos. Their clumsy struggle causes all of them to topple over into a massive, tangled dog pile. In a flash, Tsukiko, Hoshine, and Koyoi all transform into their awakened elf forms. Realizing this happens in the middle of a crowded water park, the three of them panic. They grab a shocked Akira and quickly run away, saying they will meet him later. Left alone on the bench, he watches them leave in amazement, surprised they awakened without any of his pranks. Back at the mansion, everyone is exhausted from the chaotic pool trip. Akira feels frustrated because Tsukiko, Hoshine, and Koyoi have all awakened their elf forms, leaving only her behind. She feels left out and wonders why Hashibami has never pranked her, even though she considers herself the most outgoing in the house. Meanwhile, Hashibami is resting in his room, thinking about how tiring the day was and how the three awakenings happened by accident. Suddenly, someone knocks on his door. When he opens it, he sees Akira holding a heavy textbook, asking him to help her study statistics.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.